Hey, Bene. Good morning, my relatives. This is Mark Charles. Today is Thursday, July 6th, and I'm sitting down with my second cup of coffee. And I wanted to talk about a few things as we go into the end of the week. But I hope everybody's doing well today. It's a beautiful day here in Washington, D.C. Well, it's a little warm, a little humid, but this is what summer's like in Washington, D.C. So it's not a bad day. It's a pretty good day. I went out for a walk this morning, and it was nice to get out and breathe the air. I haven't been able to watch the sunrise this week because it's been fairly cloudy. We have rain and clouds almost every day, so I haven't been able to watch the sunrise yet this week. But I am keeping an eye on what the weather is going to be like, so hopefully I can catch it. If not later this week, next week. But before I begin, let me do like I always do, which is acknowledge I'm speaking to you from the traditional lands of the Piscataway. And I want to honor the Piscataway as the hosts of the land where I'm living. And I want to thank the Piscataway for their stewardship of these lands. I see Mr. Phil Fox is with me this morning. Good morning, Phil. Good to see you. George, so glad you're here. Glad you could join this morning. And we got Mary also online. Mary, thank you for joining all the way from the Southwest. It's good to see you here this morning. I hope if you want to grab a cup of coffee, I want to just have a chat about a few not necessarily connected topics, but I wanted to discuss a few things. I wanted to discuss technology. I wanted to discuss living healthier, and I wanted to discuss the implicit racial bias of the U.S. government. So before I get into that, there's a news article that caught my eye the other day. I don't have a lot of thoughts on it yet, but it was very interesting. If you'll remember, it was actually in 2020, so 3 years ago, when the McGirt case came out. And I've spoken about the McGirt case. This is the case where the Supreme Court ruled that for judicial purposes, pretty much all of eastern Oklahoma is reservation land, including the city of Tulsa. And this was brought because a Native man was caught and convicted of a crime against another Native person in Tulsa. And he sued and said, "You're supposed to try me in a federal court, not a state court, because this land is technically a reservation, because the federal courts is what have jurisdiction over Native peoples on reservations." And the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And surprisingly, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of McGirt, right? In favor of, and they were very specific. They said for judicial purposes, all of eastern Oklahoma is essentially reservation land, including Tulsa. This meant that there had to be a lot of rescheduling of cases that had previously been tried in the state court, and now it had to be retried in federal court. And it was kind of a landmark decision. A lot of people were really excited about it. I was not that enthused because I read the entire case, and there were absolutely some what do you call it, nuggets, whatever you want to call them. There are some references to white supremacy, and basically saying that the Congress has the authority whenever it wants to rewrite or even nullify treaties with Native nations. And so, it was not the best ruling, and it's kind of been undone. There were some more cases since then that I've kind of rolled back some of what happened in McGirt. But anyway, it was a fairly landmark decision. And so this caught my eye the other day, this story. It was on ABC News. And the story is the court says Tulsa can't give a Choctaw man a ticket because the Oklahoma City is on reservation land. I read the article, and so technically city police, local police do not have jurisdiction over Native Americans on reservation lands, right? This is federal land. And so, again, this was what McGirt was all about. And so you have to be tried in federal court or in a tribal court. And so some Choctaw man apparently got a ticket in Tulsa. And basically he fought the ticket saying, the city police doesn't have the right to give me a ticket because for judicial purposes, this is reservation land. Um, right. It'll be interesting to see what happens with this case as it moves forward. It really kind of made me smile because I'm fairly confident the court system is going to squash this. Right. I'm fairly confident they will find some way to basically say, yeah, we actually, but anyway, maybe it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. I don't know, but it made me smile at the creativity of what our Native people are doing to basically push back against some of these rulings. So, and to find some loopholes in there. So anyway, I'll keep an eye on that case, but I thought it was pretty interesting that, and not only did they basically go to court and say that they don't have jurisdiction to give me a ticket, but the courts agreed. Of course, this is the lower courts, and so it's up in the Supreme Court where this probably ultimately will be tried. But maybe it doesn't get there. I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting, and I thought I would share that with you. But the story I wanted to talk about, and this is a story I saw in the Washington Post, and it came out a few days ago. It was a Senate panel that found that the pre January 6th intelligence failures by the FBI were numerous and very, very, very prevalent. And I read the article. I haven't read the panel's report, but I did read the article, and it's what was being reported all along, right? Which is that FBI, Capitol Police were given numerous warnings that there were things being planned, that there were people coming to DC with weapons, that there was something that was going to happen, and to most people's surprise, right, all of those warnings were ignored, and January 6th happened. There was an insurrection. They actually took the Capitol, and right, and then they even let them out and let them go home, and now they're trying to go back and arrest them. And the thing that really made me think about, well, the thing that this article brought to mind most straightforwardly was the issue, and we wrote about this in our book on selling truths. We wrote about in one of the early chapters here about what's called implicit racial bias. And I want to share a few articles with you about implicit racial bias. The first article, and first I'm going to just give you the website because the link I'm going to share with you is going to take you directly to a PDF file. But this is this website that I'm giving you is for the Justice Research and Statistic Association. Justice Research and Statistic Association. And the website is about objective research for more equitable outcomes. And then the website I want to give to you, or the PDF I want to give to you, is an article that they published, a factual article. This is not a long article; it's a short article about implicit racial bias, and I put that into the link there as well. And there's a few things I just want to highlight from this article, and there's one definition I want to give you. Let me actually bring it up on my screen here a minute if I can. I forgot to upload it, so let me grab it really quick. But there's a definition of implicit racial bias from this article, and I just want to read it for you. It says, it is important to distinguish implicit racial bias from racism. It is important to distinguish implicit racial bias from racism or discrimination. Implicit biases are associations made by individuals in the unconscious state of mind. This means that the individual is likely not aware of the biased association. Implicit racial bias can cause individuals to unknowingly act in discriminatory ways. This does not mean that the individual is overtly racist, but rather that their perceptions have been shaped by experiences, and these perceptions potentially result in biased thoughts or actions. No one is immune from having unconscious thoughts and associations, but becoming aware of implicit racial bias creates an avenue for addressing the issue. And this article and this website is really looking at the role of implicit racial bias in the justice system, right? This article that I'm sharing with you, it's pointing out the implicit racial bias in the justice system and looking at, right, the disproportionate numbers of arrests and of shootings for people of color and all the things that I talk about very frequently. This article references some of that. And there was one other paragraph I wanted to highlight for you. I don't have a screenshot of it, but I'll read it for you. It says, indeed, scientific research has demonstrated that hidden biases are pervasive, that they operate largely under the scope of human consciousness, and that they influence the ways in which we see and treat others, even when we are determined to be fair and objective. Simply put, everyone possesses implicit biases, even people with avowed commitments to impartiality, and they can influence choices and actions without conscious thinking or decision making. But implicit biases are also malleable, meaning they can be unlearned through various debiasing techniques. Now, the reason I want to bring this up in reference to the article I shared to you about the Washington Post is I truly believe implicit racial bias was playing a huge factor, right? Because law enforcement, which we already know, we've seen, it's been clearly demonstrated, the judicial system, law enforcement, and the criminal justice system has an absolute implicit racial bias against people of color, right? That's very, very, very clear. Even the 13th Amendment keeps enslavement legal within our criminal justice system, right? And so this justice system exists. It even states there is an implicit racial bias in the Constitution, in our criminal justice system. And you see that in the numbers as you look at arrest rates and at incarceration rates and everything else and police killings and all these other things. You see that implicit racial bias very, very, very clearly. What's fascinating here, though, is what I think was going on with January 6th was the reverse of this implicit racial bias, right? Which, because the warnings they were getting were coming, and the warnings were about white people, right? Trump supporters, people who were supporting one of the most whitest president our nation has ever had, right? As far as just his ideals and his mentality and his understanding of diversity and all these other things, right? He is one of the whitest people we've ever elected. And so when law enforcement heard that white people were coming to do illegal and even violent acts, right? There didn't make this connection. I am absolutely positive that had the warnings began, Muslims were going to come and do this, or African Americans were going to come and do this, or Native Americans were going to come and do this, or Latinx people were going to come and do this, there would have been a barricade in front of the Capitol building. There would have been a major police force out in front. But because the warning was white people are going to be coming and doing this, they didn't see it as a threat. They didn't see it as a threat. Oh, it's just going to be a protest. They're not really going to come, right? They're not. It's just going to be a protest. I am absolutely convinced that what we saw was the reverse of this implicit racial bias. And I've said numerous times on my own, in my own writings, as well as on my Second Cup of Coffee, my lectures, right? If President Obama had done half of the things that Donald Trump did to attempt to stay in power, right? Had he done half of the things, a quarter of the things, he would have been like ousted so quickly by bipartisan vote, right? From both sides of Congress. Why? Because it's terrifying to white people if there is a person of color trying to remain in power. That's horrifying, right? That's what other nations do. But because Trump, well, again, the whitest of all presidents we've ever had, is doing these things, we don't see them as nearly the threat that they are. Or we only see them as a partisan threat. And so this is where I think this issue of implicit racial bias is really important. And one of the things I like about the article that it states, and one of the things that I feel very strongly about is, right, yeah, you can't, implicit racial biases are subconscious. We all have them. But the more you are aware of your biases, the more you understand, like, this is the mindset I have, this is the context I'm working from, the more you can work to more explicitly override them, or at least acknowledge them. The most dangerous implicit racial biases is when you're not aware of your biases and you actually think you're objective. Again, this is the problem with our criminal justice system. This is the problem with Americans when they read the US Constitution, right? This is the problem with people that think America stands for equality. They don't understand that, no, we have these biases written into our foundations. And so when they read the Declaration of Independence, they overlook the fact that it states Native peoples are merciless Indian savages, right? They overlook the fact that it says all men, not all people, are created equal. That's implicit racial bias. The fact that we read these things and still say these documents advocate for equality, that's an implicit racial bias. And people get offended, right? Someone just replied to me the other day on my Twitter feed when we put up not a video, an image showing what the Declaration of Independence says. And he said, "Oh, it must feel nice knowing that you arrogantly thinking," or I forget how they exactly said it, but arrogantly thinking that you would have not done the same thing had you been alive in 1776, right? And this is what happens when you point out to people their implicit racial biases. They get very uncomfortable. So anyway, I wanted to just point this out because I think this is something we absolutely have to be much more aware of. And we have to understand the narrative that's coming out, because the media has this exact same bias. Yeah, they're very good about showing different skin tones on their screens, but they don't represent the news from these different angles, right? This whole system, whether it's politics or the media, no matter what your color of skin is, you're trained, you're groomed from a very young age in your career that you have to present the news, you have to embrace policies from this white majority perspective. And so if you want to be successful, you got to learn how to do that well. You got to learn how to not offend white people, because that's your money train, right? That's the gravy that your agency or your politics get. So anyway, I wanted to point this out. I hope that is helpful as you kind of look at that news. But as you read about this panel and that report, just understand that there is a lot of implicit racial bias at play there. The other thing I wanted to talk about is living healthier. And I don't talk about this a lot. Maybe sometimes I do on my 10 cups of coffee. But as I'm getting older, right? I'm over 50 now, and I am beginning to very intentionally think about what do I need to do to make sure I'm healthy. And whether that's eating better or exercising or sleeping better, right? I'm actually becoming much more aware of my patterns, and not just the things I'm conscious of, but what are my daily patterns of things I do without even thinking about it, and are they healthy or are they not? And the problem is for most of my life, I didn't grow up thinking about these. I wasn't necessarily unhealthy, but I grew up, I can function, actually function fairly well on about 5.5 hours of sleep. I'm a morning person. I love getting up early in the morning, but I'm also an interactive person. I'm an extrovert, and I love having conversations and interacting with people and so on. And so I can tend to go to bed late, but I also can tend to wake up very early. And so, yeah, I've learned how to function on 5.5 hours of sleep. Now, that's not healthy, right? As I'm getting older, I'm like, holy crap, I'm not getting the sleep that I need to restore my body every night, and I need to be healthier with that. And so I'm actually, one of my commitments for 2023 is I want to get a better handle of my sleep, which means I have to get to bed earlier. I'm a morning person. I wake up early. even if I wanted to sleep in, I probably could not sleep in past 8 or 8:30 if I wanted to. If you gave me, you have nothing till noon mark, I would probably still wake up between 6:30 and 7. I'm just a morning person. That's when I wake up. So if I'm going to sleep better, I have to go to bed earlier. And so I've been working on that this year, and I've actually upped my average. I'm probably averaging more than 6 hours of sleep a night. My goal is to get to 7, where I'm actually in bed for 7 hours. Maybe I'm not sleeping the entire time, but I'm in bed, lights out, eyes shut, and maybe I'm 20 minutes or 30 minutes awake yet as I'm kind of lying there. I wake up a few times during the night, but I'm trying to be in bed 7 hours and to sleep 6.5 to 7 hours a night. And so that's one of the things I've been working on. Also, right, my diet. I've been working on my diet for a while. Again, I've never thought about it. I've tried to make healthy choices, but especially when I travel, it's so easy to eat out, to eat a lot of fast food, to just have an unhealthy diet. I've slowly over the years been trying to improve my diet over the past probably 2 decades. It was about 20 years ago I gave up diet soda, maybe 15 years ago. That was a very healthy choice, right? It's now being proven that artificial sweeteners are actually not good for you. And so I've given up diet sodas. And now my next objective was to take basically all the calories or the sugar calories out of my drinks. So I don't drink many juices, anything that has a lot of added sugar. I try to drink a lot of water, and I drink coffee. It took me about a year to teach myself to drink my coffee without sugar. But I really like it now. I have coffee with cream, and cream obviously has calories, but they're not just calories from sugar. So there's some at least more productive calories in there. But I drink a lot of water, and so I've been working on that over COVID. When I was home, literally, I was home for 2 years over COVID, and I we didn't eat out hardly at all. A, because it was hard to eat out, and B, to order in was really expensive. And so we had a lot of extra money in our food budget. And so we began to cook healthier and better meals, and actually worked really hard to, can we cook meals that taste on par by our kids' standards with what they would get in some of their favorite restaurants. And so we began making a menu and began cooking things and working on them and trying to perfect these foods so that, yeah, we actually want what we cook at home more than what we would eat in a restaurant. And so these are the things I've been trying to do to be healthy without becoming obsessed by them, right? Is trying to do all that. And one of the tools that I've used, so we've done a lot of things. Like we have a Microsoft to-do list where we put all of our recipes. And we start our recipes. I Google. So like a few weeks ago, I wanted to learn how to make paninis. A few months ago, my daughters were eating paninis. There was an Italian place not far from here. They would order them every time we got food from there. And I thought, let's learn how to make paninis. So I Googled best panini recipe and how to make a panini without a panini press, because we didn't have a panini press. And I found the recipe to make the bread. I found the way to make a press, or to make a panini using cast iron skillets instead of a panini press. And we found out what are the ingredients that go on your average panini. We started making them from home. I made them maybe 4 times over the past 2 months. And the last time I made it, my daughter said, "Yeah, Dad, this is as good as what we get at the restaurant. Like this, we've I don't know if perfected is the right word, but we're on par with what we would get at the restaurant." But because we're at home, right, we're putting a lot less salt in. We're using healthier oils. We're using, more real ingredients, and so it's a healthier panini than what you would get at your normal restaurant. And so anyway, so we have all these recipes that start with a recipe from a website that we then modify and change, and we track the ingredients we add and take out, and so on. And so we're getting this kind of family cookbook on our Microsoft To Do that we've shared with our family members. And so our son, who's living, he's working full time in Iowa now, and he has his own job. He graduated from college, and he still uses our family to-do list for recipes and to look things up. And so, yeah, so we're using technology. And so when I go shopping every week, I go through, we have maybe 35, 40 recipes in there of meals we make. I just go through and say, okay, I'm going to plan the menu for this week. These are the meals I'm going to cook. And then I see, okay, so if we're going to cook these meals, these are what we have to buy in the grocery store. And so we do all that. And if I'm staying on top of that, right, over the weekends, I'm planning my menus, and then we go shopping, and then we have all the food we need for the week. And it's good for the budget, good for our health, and it's food we like. And we're learning how to cook a wide variety of food. And so we use technology a lot in the way in these things we're trying to do healthy. About 6 months ago, I bought my wife a Fitbit. I bought it for her birthday. And she wanted to be able to, she works from home. She wanted to be able to track her steps better and just get a better gauge on her sleep. And she told me that for my birthday, if you could give me a Fitbit, I would love that. So I found a good Fitbit that was a style she liked. And she began using it and was tracking, things with her health and with her exercise and her sleep. And one night, yeah, I asked my wife if I could borrow her watch for a night. I just wanted to see how it tracked my sleep, like how my sleep went, because I've been working on my sleep this year. And I used it. It worked well. It gave me some insights into what I was doing with my sleep and when I was waking up and some things that might be disturbing my sleep. And so I thought about maybe I should get a Fitbit myself. Now, for those of you who don't know, I love technology, right? I absolutely love technology. My first computer that I bought way back, this is in the early 80s. I bought a Timex Sinclair 1000, right? This was one of the first affordable personal computers you could buy. It had a micro touch keyboard. You hooked it up to your TV. You used a tape drive to input data into it. And it came with 4K of memory, right? 4K, not 4 megabytes or 4 gigabytes, 4K of memory. And then I expanded mine I bought that. You see that box in the back, that little box there? It's like 2 inches by 2 inches. I bought that, which was a 16K memory expansion. So I had the deluxe model of the Timex Sinclair 1000. This is back when I was a teenager, probably a junior high student in the early 80s. And anyway, so I've been working in computers. I've been using computers. I was very much using technology even when I was a young person. And then in college, I didn't want to go into computer programming. I did take a programming class. And then after college, I began doing database design and began working with the internet and taught myself HTML. And so most of my life, I've been fairly on up to speed on the newest technology. And I haven't always been. I am a programmer. I've done database design and database programming and things like that. I'm not a hardcore programmer, but I can figure out my way around a programming project. And anyway, and so I really like technology. I've always enjoyed technology. I was an early adapter to, right, I got the Timex Sinclair 1000 when I was a teenager. I bought a PDA even before there were smartphones. I got a smartphone in the mid 90s, or not a smartphone, a cell phone in the mid 90s. And I got I got my first tablet computer. I think it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. I remember I got a tablet computer. And I loved it. The fact that I could not only have a laptop, something that was portable, but a tablet that I could actually touch the screen with. And maybe it was early 2000s when I got my first tablet. I forget when it came out. But anyway, so I've been using tablet computers for a long time with touch screens, long before they became popular. But I'm not always the earliest adapter. But when I research and find technology that I like, I really try to find technology that's going to make my life better. And so obviously I've been using a smartphone now for a number of years, and I really appreciate that. One of the technologies I was pretty certain I was not going to adapt was the smartwatch. Right? I was pretty sure that wasn't going to be me. If you know me, I haven't worn a watch since probably my junior high days. I've I've never I have not worn a watch, and I that's been intentional, right? I haven't worn a watch for most of my all of my adult life, and most of my even my younger life. I think I had a Dallas Cowboys watch when I was in like the sixth grade, and that might have been the last watch that I owned. I don't remember fully, but anyway, I've never liked wearing watches, in part because I don't like my life being controlled by time and by a schedule and everything else. And I always, yeah, so I've never worn watches, and so I thought, well, I'll probably pass on the smartwatch um, whole stream of things because I don't want to start wearing a watch. But when my wife got her Fitbit, and when I saw the way that she could track her sleep, I thought there might be something there, right? That might be an interesting thing to do. And especially since I've been trying to get better sleep, and even though I'm sleeping more than I was a year ago, I'm still having some quality of issue sleep with my sleep, quality of sleep issues. Not it's not horrible. But I wake up a bit more than I probably want to. I don't sleep as long as I want to. And so I thought if I could track my sleep and just have a better sense of what I'm doing, and then I'm trying things every night to adjust my sleep a little bit to see if this helps, if this doesn't help. And so I thought, yeah, a Fitbit, having a watch, a smartwatch with a Fitbit on it might help me with my my sleeping desires. And so when I tried my wife's, that I started thinking about it more intentionally. And then so I looked at smartwatches. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, I am an Android person 100%, right? I do almost nothing on Apple. I decided long time ago that I was going to share my information with as few companies as possible, and so I didn't want to like mix platforms a lot, and so I was using Google on my computer, and so I thought I'm going to use Android on my phone, and that's going to be my right. This is going to be where my data sharing goes, and so yeah, so I'm an Android person, and I love it. I love my Android phone. I have a Google Pixel phone. I've had it for 2 or 3 generations now. And so, but Google had not come out with its own watch for a number of years. So Samsung made an Android watch, but Google didn't have a watch. And they, in the past year, did something very interesting, which is they, first of all, they bought Fitbit, and then they released their Google Pixel watch. And so I was looking at the watch, and of course, it has nearly all of the Fitbit technology incorporated directly into the watch because Google now owns Fitbit. And I liked how it looked, I liked the style of it. And so a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, I decided to go with a Google Pixel watch. And I'm wearing a watch right now, and I'm using it to track my sleep, and it's actually working to improve my sleep. I'm also using it to track my exercise better, and I'm finding even in the past week I'm exercising more consistently, and I'm getting out and getting walks more and doing things more consistently. And I have been very, very, very pleased with how wearing this watch has helped motivate me to live healthier. But the healthiest thing my watch has done, right? And let me tell you this. So, my other philosophy about technology is when I buy technology, I always buy the best technology that I can afford at the time. I buy as top of the line, the newest technology that is tested and working, and I buy the best technology I can afford, and then I quit researching it for a number of years, right? Because obviously the next month some else is going to come out, and right, senior like an Apple person who they're buying every version of whatever's coming out, and you're always upgrading, and you're throwing tons of money into your thing just so you have the latest and greatest. But my philosophy is I buy the best technology that I can afford when I buy it, and then I use it for 3 to 5 years, and then start looking at the end of life of when I need to get something else. So anyway, when I looked at my watch, there were two options, and that was a slight jab at Apple a few minutes ago. But anyway, there's a whole tension I have with Apple. Anyway, um, uh, there were two styles of the Google Watch. There was the Wi-Fi Bluetooth, or there was the Wi-Fi Bluetooth and LTE cellular version. And I was debating, okay, so obviously the Wi-Fi Bluetooth ties your watch is tied to your phone, right? It doesn't have enough processing power or technology in it to do all these things on its own, and so it's tied to your phone. And so you can tie it to your phone through Wi-Fi, through Bluetooth, and if you want, through a cellular network. And so I debated, do I want to have the Bluetooth only, which is cheaper, or do I want to get the LTE version, which gives me the ability to actually use my watch, not without my phone, but apart from my phone, right? So they share a SIM card. So your phone needs to be turned on. It needs to connect to your phone. But if you have the LTE, the cellular version of the watch, you can leave your phone at home and only travel with your watch. And so I was reading a ton of reviews, like, how does it work? Can you really function without your phone and only use your watch? And I read a bunch of reviews, and I was researching all the stuff I could find. And there was a lot of good reviews and bad reviews about the Google Pixel Watch. Generally, they were very positive. They said, yes, it's a first generation watch, but they got a lot of things right. And it is close to being on par with the Apple Watch. And so there's a few things they need to work out that can both come up via software as well as hardware upgrades in the future, maybe second generation watch. But there's a lot they can do just with software upgrades. And they've already addressed a lot of those things anyway. But I couldn't find anyone who was using the LTE functionality of the watch. And then last week, about a week ago, a week and a half ago, I found a review of someone who tried to live 30 days with only his watch and not taking his smartphone with him at all. And he laid out, yeah, this is some of the benefits. This is some of the things that were hard, right? There's some things that don't work as well on the watch that you may want your cell phone for. But he basically proved that you could do it, that it is possible with the LTE version of the Google Pixel Watch, that you can, a majority of your time, leave your house without your cell phone, your smartphone. And that was what I was looking for, right? Because and everyone knows this, this is not just me, but this is all of us, right? We are so tied to our cell phones, right? And they are such a distraction. We spend hours a day on them. Who has not wasted half hour, 45 minutes, even a couple hours at a time, right? Going through TikTok, going through Reels, scrolling through social media. And this isn't time you had planned to like look for something or respond to people. This is just mindless, right? And so often the go-to device when we're sitting at a bus stop or waiting in a waiting room or just waiting for something, right? We're on our cell phones. Right. This is what we do now. And so it's become our go-to thing. And what it does is it takes us out from being in the present. And it's very difficult to be approachable, even in public, when your eyes are glued to your cell phone. And so I've been wanting to make a break from my cell phone, right? And I would tell myself, I'm a Gen X, right? I grew up without cell phones. We used to go out and play, and there were no cell phones around. And right, right, we survived without Google Maps and without our cell phones, and no one being able to call us. And right, we lived, we survived our teenage years. And yet today, it's almost unthinkable to think about leaving the house without your cell phone. And I will grant it, there's an incredible lowering of stress, especially during emergency situations, when you have your cell phone with you, right? You can contact people, you can let people know what's going on, you can touch base with people, you can send a text, you can leave a message, right? It's so much easier when you're able to be reachable. And so I wanted to break from the social media grip and just the magnet quality of the cell phone, which drew me in, right? But I did not want to give up the technology of the being able to be reachable, or the connectivity part of it. And so I've had my watch for a week and a half now. And actually for a week. I got it last week, Wednesday. And I love it. I have left the house numerous times without my phone. I'm able to still connect my watch to my car so I can get directions from Google Maps over my speakers. I'm able to receive phone calls on it. I can respond to texts. I can even respond to emails if I have to. But the screen is obviously so small, I can't do anything on social media, and I can't really read anything, right? I'm not going to read news on here. I can still connect it to my Spotify, so I can get podcasts and I can get playlists and I can even get the news on it. But I'm not spending hours staring at my watch. And it has been amazing to be able to leave the house without my cell phone, right? It's been an amazing experience to be able to leave my house without my cell phone, take my watch, know my family can still call me if they need to, they can still text me if they have to, I can still get directions to where I'm going, and I can hear them on my speaker or even on my headphones, right? I can do all of those things, but I don't have the things that absorb you into the ecosystem of the smartphone, where you're just absorbed by it and kind of clueless to what's going on around you. And the health benefits of that have been amazing, right? I have felt so much less, I don't know if stressed is the right word, but I've been feeling increasingly more free as I've gotten even more comfortable with walking out of the house without my smartphone, even kind of feeling bummed. Yesterday, I had to go out and I had to park somewhere, and I knew to park, I would have to pay for parking, and I have a parking app on my phone, so I brought it with me, so I could pay for my parking on my phone. I don't have a parking app on my watch yet. And so I had to bring my phone with me, and I was kind of bummed. I'm like, oh, I wish I could have left the house without my phone. But I'm finding I'm on social media less. And when I am on social media now, it's more intentional to look up something or to respond to something or to post something. And I'm not just kind of breezing through it. And also especially when I'm out without my phone, I'm not absorbed by my phone when I have to wait for something, right? If I'm sitting in a waiting room waiting, I'm not reading on my phone. I'm not looking, right? I'm sitting there. I'm much more present in the moment. And I can feel my mind slowly beginning to detangle itself from my smartphone. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And so this is one of the best pieces of technology, top 5 pieces of technology in my lifetime, right? Obviously, the smartphone, the phone and the smartphone was a big piece of technology. Being able to have a tablet or a laptop as compared to a desktop computer was a big piece of technology. Just having a computer in your home instead of in a supercomputer or somewhere networked off was a huge piece of technology. But being able to have a lot of my smartphone connectivity applications available on my wrist without the consuming social media that comes with your smartphone has been absolutely amazing. And I love the way I can feel myself every day feeling less and less tied to my smartphone and enjoying the freedom that's coming with wearing this watch. So anyway, I'm very excited about this. And if you notice, right, my post this morning, and I think if you follow me on social media, you'll know that I post, and sometimes I don't post very regularly, but I like to put up kind of what's going on. And the other day, I was posting some stuff, and I realized almost all of my posts are responsive, right? I'm responding to things that are coming from what's being said or from reading social media, and I'm not as much just posting things out of things that I'm enjoying or that I'm thinking about or that are just kind of what I'm want to do in a more positive way. And this morning, if you remember, if you follow me on social media, you'll notice that I posted this one post, and let me share it here just a second with you. Um, and I was actually doing some exercise. I was about ready to go for a walk, and I was um, just thinking about my day, and a song came on. It was Tom's Diner by Suzanne Vega. And the song absolutely reminded me of some friendships I had back in college. And it made me so happy to think about those friendships and to hear that song and to be able to listen to it. And so I posted and I said, first I put it on Facebook, but then on Twitter, I said in the morning while drinking my first cup of coffee, I like to listen to my coffee shop radio on Pandora. Tom's Diner by Suzanne Vega just played, and I was immediately reminded of friendships from college. I love how songs and memories go together. Walk in beauty, my relatives. And I actually felt really positive about that post, right? It wasn't a ground shaking discussion on implicit racial bias. It wasn't pointing out a challenge we have to face as a country. It was just talking about something that brought a smile to my face that day. And obviously, there's a lot of things we need to talk about and a lot of things that need to change. But if we lose the ability to just walk in beauty and enjoy that beauty, right, we're not going to be able to live very long, or at least very healthily. And so, yeah, I wanted to just share a few things. I know I've been on here for a while, but I wanted to just talk a few things about living healthy and technology. And technology, right, it can be a two-edged sword, right? Because there's obvious benefits to having a smartphone and the things we can look up and the research that we can do, but it also can become something that both consumes, entangles, and even traps us in a bubble that's unapproachable, especially when we're out in public. And it can even be harmful to our mental health. And so when I found a piece of technology that freed me from other essential technology, one of the early fruits of that was my tweet this morning, where I was just able to share something that made me happy. Obviously, there's things we'll talk about. I talked about implicit racial bias earlier and things that we need to address, but I can feel myself detangling. I can feel myself walking in beauty even more fully as I'm regaining some of the freedom that I've been losing over the past decade to things like my smartphone. Anyway, I hope this is helpful, my relatives. Let me look through the comments. I've been talking for a while. Terry, yeah, hey, thanks. Yes, throw your wallet or your phone in your purse. And enjoy the rest. Glad you enjoy your dictation. So I've named my watch Get Smart, right? If you remember back in the 60s and 70s, there was a TV show called Get Smart, and Maxwell Smart was a private eye or detective, and he had all this technology. The joke was his shoe phone, but he also had a watch phone. And all right, I've named my watch. I refer to my watch as my Get Smart watch because it reminds me of that. And I've named my car, I refer to my car, we have a black Honda Accord, and I call my car Kit, right? Because I can hook up my smartphone to it. I can actually talk to my car. Hey, give me directions here. What's the weather over there? And my car will respond back to me. For me, that's the dream, right? This, as a Gen X person, I'm not waiting for flying cars, which are not far off, by the way. One was actually approved the other day, but we'll talk about that later. I'm not waiting for flying cars. I'm waiting for Kit. I'm waiting for Night Industry 2000 for a an AI enabled car that I can not just give commands to, or right, have it turn lights on and off, or give me information at a beck and call, but I can actually have a conversation with. We're not quite there yet. I've tried some of the voice activated and the voice response AI technology. It's not quite where I want it to be. Microsoft has an AI out there that you can talk to. It's an AI powered search engine that you can talk to. I think you can have up to like 20 interactions with it, or 20 back and forth with it, but it's not there. It's not fully like the Chat GBT experience yet. But anyway, that's my dream, right? I want a car. So I love the Dick Tracy comment there. Yes, David Hasselhoff was Knight before he was on Baywatch. He was Michael Knight on Knight Rider, and his car was named Kit, which stood for Night Industry 2000. And that was the dream car, right? Kit was kind of sassy and could control a bunch of things, but also had a lot of wit, and you could have a very good conversation with it. I loved Kit, and that's been my dream, right? And my kids are like, Dad, why do you use Google Voice? You just type them in. It's annoying. I'm like, because the dream I grew up with as a Gen X kid is I want a car I can talk to. So anyway, so that is one of my comments. But anyway, my relatives, I hope these things are helpful. And I'm going to find some way. I had kind of a longer discourse about technology and health today. I hope to find ways to share some of these more briefly in future episodes of My Second Cup of Coffee, whether it's to share a recipe and give a link to it, or to talk about some of the stuff, or even get your feedback on it. So feel free to, in the comments, place what are some of the things that you do to live more healthy. And I like to read the comments after the shows are over, and I can bring some of them back even into some future episodes. But I'd love to get feedback from you of the stuff I'm sharing. Is it helpful, and what are some of the things that you do to be healthier and to live healthier? So it's a journey, my relatives. Walking in beauty is absolutely a journey, and it's something we must learn how to do. So I hope you have a great day, my relatives. Thank you for joining me. I hope your second cup of coffee is as good as mine is. And I need to let you know I'm going to be traveling for the next few days. I actually travel to Kansas tomorrow. I'm going to be at a meeting with Sarah Augustine and some of her group, who are doing the dismantling the doctrine of discovery work. And so I have the privilege of meeting with them. And so I'll be there on Saturday and Sunday, and then I fly back on Monday. And Saturday night in Hutchinson, Kansas, I'm actually going to be giving a On Selling Truths book talk for about 20 minutes that evening. I'll share that post on my social media, but it is out there. And again, I just want to share, if you would like to get a copy of my book, On Selling Truths, you can purchase those on my website. You'll remember back in June, I was selling them, but was not charging shipping. And we announced that deal was ending at the end of the month. And we're not promoting anymore, but I haven't removed the free shipping from the website yet. So if you buy the book today, you might actually still get free shipping, because I haven't got around to removing or to adding the shipping back onto the website. So you might be able to still get that deal if you'd like to try. But there's the link. But yeah, my relatives, walk in beauty. And may we all learn how to walk in beauty together. Huck on that.